Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Fanzone Debate. We are here for the first match of the season. We got Jack Pinchuk taking on Brooklyn Vail. We got a stellar group of judges here for you today. We got Kirk, former champion of the league, here joining us today. Kirk, welcome back to the judges' seat. And what do you think about Jack taking on Brooklyn?
This is going to be an interesting match. Jack, made a lot of headway last year, but I think he played mostly like newer, in the grand scheme of things, at least newer players, where Brooklyn is, somebody who's come from, the older debate world that, kind of doesn't exist anymore, but he was a contender in a lot of older leagues. So to me, this is like the clash of two different generations, and I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. We got Mark Menchaca on the desk here as well, looking like a cop who is too old for this shit. Mark, how you doing? And what do you think of the matchup?
I know it should be good. I've hosted with Brooklyn a couple times. I don't think I've seen. I'm not 100% sure if I've just debated this. I don't think so. It'd be fun to be able to see it. And Jack is one of the up and comers in this league. It's been fun to kind of watch how his game has evolved over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So we are going to bring in the players. We're going to start by talking to Brooklyn. Brooklyn, quick thoughts. Want to get inside that head of yours quickly here. Your thoughts on going up against Jack? Like Kirk said, you were a contender in a lot of other leagues, but since joining Fanzone, had some mild success, but not the big success to go on and face for like the titles. But now you got that shot here. If you win this match against Jack, you move on to another match, so on and so forth. Could get to the title. Your thoughts going into this one?
I just want to win a point. I haven't won a point in 6 questions, so that's the first step, and just go from there. I'm glad to go up against Jack. Like, I've gotten to know him a little bit more over the last year or so. So I'm excited for 2 of these questions in particular.
Awesome. All right, we are going to bring in Jack Pinchuk. I can't be mad at you all night, so I'm just going to put it in here now. Jack, we all know that you suck, so why don't you try to convince us that you don't? What do you think about going up against Brooklyn?
I'm nervous. I'm not gonna lie. Like Brooklyn, he's been around debate for a long time, so going up against anyone as experienced as him will always be nerve-wracking for me. I feel better than I did about my abilities in debate than I did before I came back last season, because my first match really shook my confidence in my abilities here, but gained some of that confidence back. I'm just excited to get to it. There's some questions here I'm really excited about.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. Here's how it's going to work. So the players each drafted a movie Melee. I love it, but this is Fanzone. So the players drafted categories. They gave us we gave them questions based on those categories. They're going to debate those tonight before our very souls. So each of them is going to get a 1-minute opening, followed by a 5-minute freeform, followed by a 1-minute closing. At the end of the debate, Kirk, Mark, and I will write on our handy dandy boards who we thought won the debate. 2 out of 3 votes wins you a point, and the first player to 3 points wins the match. So, are there any questions before we get into this? No. Okay. Well, let's kick it off then. Right now, currently, there is a Fanzone, a Melee, and a Fandom match recording right now. Everything in Multiplex is happening at this moment. Epic. I love it. So, guys, we are going to kick this off with your first category, which was drafted by Jack. It is in the category of directors. And your question is, what is the best performance in a Park Chan-wook film? Jack, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute when you start talking to open your debate. I will come in to give you a 10-second warning when the time comes.
When trying to figure out who gives the best performance in a Park Chan-wook directed film, you're pretty spoiled for choice. Lee Young-ae, I'm sorry if I mispronounce any names. Lee Young-ae gives a brilliantly layered performance as the title character in Lady Vengeance. Song Kang-ho gives maybe the best performance of his career in the vampire film Thirst. And enough cannot be said about Tang Wei's heartbreaking turn in Decision to Leave. But none of them deliver the same caliber performance as Choi Min-sik in Old Boy. He carries this film with his vengeance-driven and oftentimes darkly comic performance, whether it's the scene with the where he's eating the live octopus, or the hammer scene, the hammer long take in the hallway. His performance is front and center, and it all culminates in that brilliant climactic scene where he is going through a whole range of emotions. It's breathtaking.
Time. I just realized that Old Boy's been on my watch list for a really long time, and I've never seen it, and it's about to get spoiled the fuck for me, hasn't it? Brooklyn, you get to open your argument now. 1 minute when you start talking.
So yeah, I went with Song Kang-ho. I'm saying Jack probably going to mispronunciate some names here. In 2000s Joint Security Area, this really cool film about the conflict of North Korea and South Korea, and the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. Something happens in there, and it's kind of up to the soldiers as to like what is the actual truth of it. It gets investigated, and Song Kang-ho plays a general on the North Korean side, and he gives a very fleshed out performance, and it's a thankless task, like giving this kind of character reason and respect, all while having the ideology of North Korea led by Kim Jong-il. And I think there's some really cool moments in there. Upon initially seeing it, it reminded me a lot of like Jack Nicholson from Few Good Men. This villain that has very kind of calm tendencies.
Okay. Ending about 8 seconds early. So, all right, guys, you get 5 minutes to freeform debate. I will throw up the 1 minute warning when the time comes, and then come in for the 10-second warning. If I feel like a point is going on for too long, or I'm sick of it, I'm going to throw up the let's move on. And if I feel like you're not letting your partner speak and you're being an asshole, I'm going to throw up the let your opponent talk. Don't make me do it, or I will send Nick Twohig to your house. So 5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
You go ahead.
Okay. So you picked probably the best actor that Park Chan-wook has ever worked with, but you picked his worst performance. In the 3 films that Song Kang-ho has appeared in with Park Chan-wook, Thirst, without question, in my opinion, his best performance in his career, and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. Song Kang-ho plays a father grieving the death of his daughter, and goes out on a quest of vengeance against the misguided criminals responsible for her death. And it's a brilliantly layered performance. But even that has nothing on his performance in Thirst, where he plays a priest who's been turned into a vampire and is trying to navigate his life. And it's a brilliant, heartbreaking performance. Whereas Song Kang-ho in Joint Security Area, he's got a lot of blank stares. He's got a lot of just stonewall face, nothing going on behind it. And he has one scene where he just gets to yell, and it's great, but that's it.
So my response to that is if you wanted to pick those Song Kang-ho movies, like they were available, you were able to pick first. The stone face moments that you're talking about are contrasted to what's happening with the other characters. Like you think about when they're meeting in the basement, and he's talking with So Hyuk about never killing someone, and like he points a gun at him, and yes, he has that stone face look, but then he comes right back at him with an AK-47 and this maniacal look on his face, like I can kill somebody. I've done it 1,000 times before. The problem that I have with Choi Min-sik and Old Boy is that he's kind of the vessel to everybody else in the movie. I think your villains are a little more get a little more nuance of a role, like Yoo Jae-tae as Woo Jin-lee, like the person that kind of sets up him being in the prison and whatnot. There's also there's the warden, where he pulls out the teeth and then he comes back later, and he's really cool. But they have more kind of fleshed out things, and the big moments that everyone kind of talks about in and Old Boy are just more so enhancements of like the script. Like Choi Min-sik in particular isn't elevating the lines. Like, sure, anybody can eat an octopus. Anybody can like kiss the feet of somebody when they find out like horrible news.
Okay, I take massive issue with something you said, and that he's just the vessel of this of everyone else in this film. This film, Old Boy, lives and dies on his performance. You're on this journey with him as he uncovers the mystery of his abduction, and this performance sells it. If you want to talk about this movie only being an achievement of the script, that's Joint Security Area. That is the best script in any Park Chan-wook movie. I know, I've seen them all, and that is an incredible script. It's very Hitchcockian, whereas this one, yes, the script is brilliant. It's adapted from a great graphic novel, but it's the performance that sells it. Not anyone can like grovel and like, sure, anyone can do that, but not anyone can do it as well as he does in that scene. It is a heartbreaking scene where he goes from defiant, I'm gonna fucking kill you, finds out what happened, and then he just breaks and he goes through every fucking emotion on the planet. It is horrifying to watch, and he sells it.
He doesn't really go through every emotion. It's the one emotion really is shock. And like you see a bit of a tremor on his face, but it's nothing different from like any other kind of like anti-hero that we've really seen. Like taking this arc of like this like kind of like drunken oath that we see him at the beginning of the movie, and then like something happens to him, and then he's going out for revenge. We've seen the Punisher do it. We've seen Wolverine do it. Every anti-hero that you've seen in these kind of action movies has done basically what he's doing. What I'm saying is with Song Kang-ho is that he has the stoicism about him, given the regime that Kim Jong-il has on them on the time. And the best example that I have here is the Mexican standoff scene where it's revealed what actually happened. So just the calmness that he has while he's trying to convince the South Korean soldiers, hey, put down the guns, like join us. And we can get you to peace and safety. And then the look of disbelief when they pull the trigger on him, like in the mass breakout, and it's blank, and he's like, his eyes really sell everything in that performance. And then whenever they kind of realize it's just three of them, and then he's like, okay, you have to go away and say that you were kidnapped and whatnot. And the last moment of him is looking, and it's like, I have to be shot for this to sell and protect the safety of everybody else.
Time. Okay. We are going to move over to Brooklyn for your closing. Brooklyn, you get 1 minute to close when you start talking.
I want to highlight one important quote from this, and I think it summarizes the character that Song Kang-ho plays perfectly in the film. What's important in battle isn't speed; it's carrying yourself with composure and bravery. That's everything. I think he's given a lot of choices in the movie that kind of give him this balance of both good and evil, like where he saves the guy from the trip mine, but then kind of chirps him onwards using the whistle and whatnot, like when they confront it in the snow. I think this beats out Choi Min-sik in particular, because Choi Min-sik is just he's thrown everything else from the movie at him, and he's reacting the same way that any other anti-hero character would. Again, yes, it's cool to eat an octopus. Yes, it's cool to have this long hallway fight where he's literally just like bent over for most of it from exhaustion. There is more emotion given in Song Kang-ho's role, and it supersedes Choi Min-sik and Old Boy.
Choi Min-sik and Old Boy. Strike it from the record. We are going to bring in Jack. Jack, you have 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
Okay, let's look at the best scene from both of them. And I'll tell you right now, Song Kang-ho is the same thing in every scene. Song Kang-ho in this film has two modes: blank stares with nothing going on behind his eyes, and then suddenly angry and spewing North Korean rhetoric in that one scene. That is it. There's nothing else to that performance. Choi Min-sik, on the other hand, in this whole film, goes through a whole gauntlet of emotion, but especially in the climactic scene between him and the villainous character in the penthouse. He starts with this determination, this absolute drive. He's going to kill the man who stole his life from him, and he sees the photos and he sees the present, And I won't elaborate further on those for that haven't seen the film yet. But if you know, you fucking know. Once he sees those photos, he goes, everything, the confidence in him just fucking drops. It's insanity. Fucking perfect.
Whew. Maggie was taken aback by the amount of fucks dropped in that one, but at one point during the debate, Jack was like, "It's fucking," and Maggie went, "Oh."
Oh.
The movie still isn't spoiled for you, Tim.
Yeah, I know. I was pretty impressed. I was like, I feel like I still don't know much. So,
I mean, if Jack doesn't get this point, he may have fallen on a sword because explaining more may have given more away, but we'll see.
All right. Are y'all ready?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to start. Good. I felt like I knew what these performances were. I thought both explained their performances very well, and their movies. And I went with Brooklyn. I haven't seen either of these movies, but Brooklyn convinced me that Jack's performance is kind of, maybe not in the words that he said, but maybe like not necessarily shock value, but just like things that anybody could do. There wasn't much nuance to it. And Brooklyn had me convinced that, you know, like his actor in his movie, that there is a lot going on there throughout the movie and in his performance. So I went with Brooklyn. I do want to specify that just because I hate Jack Pinchuk, if I vote against him, it's not because of that. So just so we're clear. Mark, have you seen these movies and who are you voting for?
I've seen one of them and I do know, but for this case, I went with Brooklyn. I think just overall, I think Brooklyn did a better job, I think, of explaining why his actor's performance was a bit more versatile and like what, and where I feel like kind of, and I think throughout he kind of explained how I think Jack's actor's performance was kind of tied to how the story is, and he's just kind of reacting to kind of what the story is providing the actor. So just for that reason, I went with Brooklyn.
All right, Kirk, your vote doesn't count, but where would you have gone and why?
I thought this fight kind of got lost in the weeds. I think Jack was talking a little bit too much about the other roles that Brooklyn's pick had played, and I think Brooklyn was talking maybe a little too much about the script and different things. I did end up going with Jack because I thought that Brooklyn, especially in his closing, was talking a lot about the character and the story, but wasn't tying it back into the performance itself, where Jack had more description of the character that I don't think Brooklyn necessarily shut down that well. So I went with Jack.
Okay, so Brooklyn wins the first point. We are going to move on to the next question. This was drafted by Brooklyn in the category of DreamWorks animation. I'm excited about this one. The question, or the statement, however you would like to say it, is a pitch question. Pitch Shrek 5. I want to hear your pitch for Shrek 5. So, Brooklyn, you're going to kick it off. Give us your pitch for Shrek 5.
All right. So when we think about what makes the Shrek films great is their success in appealing to both children and the adults that are taking them to the movies. With my pitch, we would get to see natural progressions of both the triplets and a forgotten character like Artie, all under the satirical examination of a whodunit, and the satirical kind of spoof style of humor is which fans are really kind of nostalgic for, especially like in the first two. So coming from DreamWorks is Shrek 5, Return to Far, Far Away. Shrek and Fiona receive a letter from King Artie, with Justin Timberlake reprising his role, inviting them to a dinner to celebrate the 15-year anniversary of his coronation of King of Far, Far Away. The triplets are now in high school. They could be voiced by like Michael Cera, Beanie Feldstein, Seth Green, anywhere in that kind of range. So Shrek and Fiona decide to load up the carriage and take a trip to Far, Far Away. Since they've seen Artie, he's developed the Knights of the Round Table, a UNS Council of Kingdoms. During the dinner, it's discovered that King Arthur has been poisoned and his crown has been stolen. It's up to Shrek and family to find out who done it in this spoof of a murder mystery.
Time. Okay. All right. We're going to bring in Jack. Jack! Pitch me Shrek 5.
So back in 2004, DreamWorks had plans for 5 Shrek films, with the 5th capping off his fairy tale. With that in mind, the film I'm pitching you is called Shrek: The Final Fairy Tale. Here's a brief synopsis of it. Once upon a time, an ogre rescued a princess from a dragon, fell in love, saved her from marrying an evil lord, and lived happily ever after. But that's not how the story was supposed to go. Shrek defied his destiny, and in doing so, wrote his own story, which has caused major problems for the authors of his life and the lives of countless other fairy tale creatures, the Brothers Grimm, voiced in this by Ian McKellen and Jeremy Irons. After several attempts to fix Shrek's story, they decided to take matters into their own hands and write Shrek's final fairy tale. The film I'm pitching to you is a fitting conclusion for the Shrek franchise. It pays homage to the films that came before it and keeps the most important part of Shrek's story in the center of it, his relationship with Fiona, unlike Brooklyn's, which does not.
Nice little jab there at the end. All right. So we've heard your pitches. Let's debate them. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Okay, so the first problem that I have with yours is that they already attempted to do this thing of kind of like rewriting the history in Shrek Forever After. Whenever he goes to Rumpelstiltskin, he's like, hey, I don't want to be born in the swamp. And he's like, all right, cool. And then they go back there and do it. I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to grab onto the multiversal trend that has been popping up in a lot of superhero movies. You're trying to compile like 3 stories into one movie and like fleshing out even more stuff that we don't really need when there's so much that we can already grab from a setting like Far, Far Away that we saw for a little bit in Shrek 2, and we haven't seen progress and adapt. Because think about like a lot of the Shrek demographic, they're our age, they're like 30s, late 20s. And they want to see how things have gone. I think there's also a prime opportunity of having the triplets grow up so that you could see how Shrek and Fiona maybe handle puberty or handle these really real coming of age moments, because you have Shrek, which is kind of like gross, and then Fiona, which is kind of more subtle and like more kind and whatnot. I think your idea is redundant because it's already been done before.
You're implying that I'm just piggybacking off of the multiversal trend that's been going on in superhero movies lately. You're piggybacking off of the murder mystery genre, which has been revived by Glass Onion and Knives Out and that whole deal, and they've got a whole resurgence now. We're moving away from that. This is the last Shrek movie. Like, there's not going to be any more. So are we really going to have the central figure of this one be Artie, voiced by Justin Timberlake, who everyone hated? It's not a good character, and it's the main issue people have with Shrek the Third. And if we're going to be honest right now, the triplets are not the most interesting part of these movies. They're not good. They were completely cut out of the last one, and the entire last movie was about Shrek and Fiona's relationship, and that proves how vital it is for this one. Whereas in yours, it's non-existent.
The triplets in the 4 Shrek movie were toddlers, I believe, at most. So they don't really have a chance to kind of flesh them out. Artie, I believe you're giving him time to kind of flesh out, and there's this 15-year time frame to go, and I think Justin Timberlake can really flesh out that role, because he kind of fits that character arc where it's like, yes, he's in the Hollywood equivalent of Far, Far Away. Also, to say that yours is the last movie is completely bogus, because there's always Puss in Boots spinoffs. There's always Donkey spinoffs. They're always going to flesh it out, because ultimately this thing does make money. Whether it is the last movie, it doesn't really matter. You mentioned how this is already copying off of Knives Out and Glass Onion. I think where you're wrong on that statement is that is that Shrek often kind of like spoofs these things. Like the great thing about Far Far Away is that you could throw in all of these like little references that the kids won't get, but the adults will enjoy. Like the references to like Burger King and like Starbucks and whatnot. Just the little like Easter eggs that you can find in there. I think the other thing as well is that you can have these kind of like, you can attack these tropes that you actually get from Knives Out. So, like, I think a great moment that we could have, like in my movie, is like in like the Knights Council or whatever. You could have one of the characters like consistently go from like good guy to bad guy to good guy to bad guy, and then you could have like Donkey or Shrek being like, "I'm craving donut holes. Why don't we make donut holes, everybody?" And like that's something that would be sorry.
No, you're good. Look, I like murder mysteries as much as the next guy. Shrek's just not the right vessel for that kind of story. Whereas this one, you get Shrek. These movies are full of huge name people playing great characters, and you get the Brothers Grimm in this as the ultimate villains for Shrek, and you get Ian McKellen and Jeremy Irons as those characters. You've got some great opportunities there. You don't have to completely do away with any of the humor, the jokes that Shrek's known for, that parents will get and maybe their kids won't. But what are you going to do for your villain in this movie? Are you going to have Lancelot, who picked on Artie in the Shrek the Third and was a bully to him in high school, be part of his like most trusted counsel? I don't think so. Like, what are you going to do with the villain in your story? Because the Shrek movies are as good as their villains. Fairy Godmother in Shrek 2 is the best villain of the franchise. What are you going to do with yours?
You're going to have somebody from the Knights of the Round Table, somebody like a Seth Meyers or a Bill Hader or whatnot. You're going to have them give these, Bill Hader in particular, give these really dynamic roles, and that's where kind of the flipping of good guy to bad guy comes from.
Okay. So Jack, you get to close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
There's only so much you can do with a murder mystery, and a lot of the tropes have just been done before. I'm giving you something new, something exciting for the Shrek franchise to do. You've got some great new talent coming in with McKellen and Irons, and you can get more as well. As for things that people hated about Shrek the Third, you can get rid of Artie easily. Have the Brothers Grimm show up, get rid of Artie. The murder mystery angle just does not work for Shrek. There's a fine line between satire and spoof, and spoofing a murder mystery in Shrek is just a bad idea. There's so much you can do with this idea of having the Brothers Grimm show up and try to correct his story, try to wrap things up once and for all. And at the center of this story, you get the relationship between Shrek and Fiona that is so central to this franchise. And without it, there's nothing there.
Okay. Move over to Brooklyn. Brooklyn, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
So again, I believe what you're saying with the Brothers Grimm is that you're trying to rewrite history and really kind of have this closure with when once again they've already tried to do that in Shrek Forever After Shrek Forever After with Rumpelstiltskin and trying to erase a history, and then so what it's there. Shrek can add and flesh out a murder mystery because of the wealth of characters that it has, given like your Pinocchios, your three blind mices, your Gingy. If you have everybody there, and then you can have these different perspectives of old characters and new characters, and you're mentioning that like everybody hated Artie, but the great thing that you can do as a writer is you can build on everything that they hated about this character. Like, yeah, he was whiny and pompous in the third movie. That's how he's gonna be as king. There, you have to give a incentive as to why he's being poisoned or whatnot. So I think anchoring on that is not the greatest, because you can build off of that hatred already.
Okay, so we will bring in the judges. Okay. Kirk, you're kicking this one off.
Okay. I'll just say right off the bat, I went with Jack. I think Jack, from the beginning, from the opening, I think he had the more interesting pitch. I just that first elevator pitch kind of thing, like which of these two movies off the bat do I want to see? I was much more interested in Jack's. I think that Brooklyn kind of came at him with the whole thing like it's too similar to the last movie, but I feel like Jack did enough to shoot that down and show enough difference. I feel like Jack really did a good thing to say this. Probably, even if it's not the last movie, there's a good chance it is, and you're going to use it on a murder mystery. It's different, or you're going to focus on the characters everybody loves. So I think Jack did something ballsy. He posed that question about the villains. I don't think Brooklyn had a strong enough answer for that. And I think that and another thing, I think pitches are rough, guys. I'm sorry, I hate doing pitches. I wish we never did pitches. But casting is always a double-edged sword because you don't have to do it, but you throw it out there. I think Jack's casting was a lot stronger than Brooklyn's.
Okay. I went with BK, have it your way. I am opposite of Kirk, whereas I heard the pitches, and I actually like both pitches, but I found Brooklyn's like straightforward, clear, articulate. Like I knew what this movie was from the get-go. I actually had a struggle kind of even understanding what Jack's movie was going to be. Like I understood the Brothers Grimm were going to be there. I understood there was some sort of rewriting thing, but I didn't really get it. Once he kind of explained it more, I was interested, but I was much more interested in the goofball comedy murder mystery movie. I thought Brooklyn's casting was on point. I was pretty opposite of Kirk on this one. Sorry, Mark, that you have to decide it, but you have to decide it.
Oh, that was really. I gotta explain my ear. I did also go with Brooklyn. It honestly kind of irks me because honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Brooklyn's pitch. I'm not even sure I really like the idea all that much. I like Jack's idea much better, but I don't think Jack really fleshed out the idea good enough. I was kind of waiting for him in that closing argument to kind of really, I think, add in some more elements of what's in his fifth movie, other than the Brothers Grimm showing up, who's playing them, and it's about Shrek and Fiona's relationship. And I feel like that's all I really heard. And I feel like at the end of the day, I have a better idea what Brooklyn's movie is going to be. And I don't really feel like I had a great idea what Jack's movie is going to be. And for that reason, I felt like I had to go with Brooklyn.
All right, fair enough. All right, so Brooklyn does win the point. That means that Jack has to hit this next one in order to stay in it. And I will say before we get into the next one, gentlemen, each of you have been talking for minute 15, minute 30 apiece. So try to keep that 30 to 45 seconds. You guys have been pretty even, but that one was pushing it a little bit. So try to have a better back and forth. But your next question is coming to you from a category that Jack drafted. It's in the category of epic adventures. The question is, which Middle-earth character would make the most interesting spin-off movie, and why is it Alfred? I mean, you would pick the character. So, Jack, you kick it off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
The most interesting character in the entire Middle-earth franchise is Aragorn. You've got a whole 87 plus years that you can have a movie about before he ever becomes King of Gondor, or you can have a movie about him as king, although I find that to be the less interesting approach. There's so much that happened in his life prior to the events of the Lord of the Rings. You've got him becoming chieftain of the Dunedain after he learns who he really is when at Rivendell. You've got him riding to war with Theoden's grandfather. You've got him going to war against the Corsairs with Denethor's father, Steward of Gondor, and burning a ton of their ships. And you can have these epic battle sequences that everyone loves from these movies. You can get a great young actor to replace Viggo Mortensen and make the role his own. You've got some great options here.
strike it from the record. We're going to move over to Brooklyn. Brooklyn, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
So we have this really cool middle gap that hasn't really been explored. And I think the character that would best make the most interesting spinoff would be Elrond, the elven character played by Hugo Weaving in the movies. We have this really cool middle gap of the War of the Ring, which is kind of like before Lord of the Rings, but then after Rings of Power. But TV doesn't matter in this moment. I think Elrond has a much better origin, especially given his twin Elros and how they play kind of elven and man, and then the conflict that they have later on. If it's like, oh, well, like you can kind of choose what race you want to be in the situations that has. Last thing that I'll say here, Aragorn has been alive for 87 years. My guy's immortal. So there's thousands of years that we can describe, and I'll just end there.
Okay. All right, Aragorn versus Elrond. I know things about this. 5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
So, real quick here, the most interesting part of Elrond's life is the War for the Ring, and we saw the climax of that with the Battle of the Last Alliance at the slopes of Mount Doom, and how Elrond failed to destroy the ring with Isildur. The rest of his life, basically before and after, he sits on his ass at Rivendell, especially after. Whereas Aragorn, his life is anything but boring. You've got so much you can make a movie about. You could do one of him and Arwen when they first meet and want to marry, but Elrond forbids it until he can become king. Or you can do him riding the war with Rohan and Gondor and have these epic battle sequences. There's so much you can do with it. Whereas Elrond, he's just sitting on his ass doing nothing.
Elrond's not just sitting on his ass though. He's dealt with all this conflict in his life, like his brother choosing the gift of men, as you will, to be mortal, to lose his mother at the age of 6 and whatnot. The two things that I want to point out as an attack on yours. Number one, with Aragorn and the kind of his stoicism, especially like in the original trilogy or whatever, that only works because you have Frodo and Sam as like these lovable kind of hobbits, and then you have the break to kind of go to him as like this like voice of reason and kind of like this macho-ness to him as well. Also, with Aragorn, you need Elrond because Aragorn was like his foster son or something along those lines. Because if you're going to do that, you need to have that connection, and Elrond is the bigger point there.
You would have Elrond in my film as well, especially at the start when he finds out what his true name is, like Estelle and all that. And you could have him and Arwen meeting for the first time, and then Arwen eventually wants the quote gift of man, just like Elrond's brother did, and you can have that conflict there in the movie about Aragorn, but you can also have some Elrond side like subplot to it. Aragorn, he has the much more interesting life. Like you could you could have that early relationship with Arwen that is essentially forbidden, and he ends up going to become chieftain of the Dunedain afterwards. And you can see the struggle with wanting to be with Arwen but being unable to do that. And once again with Elrond, you saw the only like worthwhile portion of his story, the whole culmination of his entire arc at in Mordor at the slopes of Mount Doom with the Battle of the Last Alliance. There's nothing like interesting to adapt from his story now.
There's the relationship that he has with Isildur and finding that one ring because of the original trilogy, and how they're like, oh, well, like we must protect this ring, but then we have this kind of undertone nature of violence in it and whatnot. Elrond is probably the most peaceful character, given how little he has to conflict in a lot of the story in general. There's also two big pieces of artifacts that you can kind of like even hand off to Aragorn as kind of like the transition of like second to third act. It's the shards of, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's something to go along with that race and whatnot. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I guess I'm just failing to see the interest in your pitch. Whereas if you want something interesting, worthwhile, something that will get people, like you said, he's this stoic character in the Lord of the Rings films. He wasn't always like that. He's a more mature, more seasoned person by that time. You could see the younger, the more rash Aragorn, and you could get someone younger, like a Tom Blythe or someone like that, to play that role. Not necessarily him, just a name that popped into my head. Anyone can take this role that Viggo Mortensen made his own, and they can do something interesting with it.
But I think the thing is, though, is that if you're going with that arc of him being this like rambunctious, kind of malicious sort of person, and that Elrond ends up being the person, so he ends up kind of becoming this like the central figure of even the Aragorn movie. Like he's so essential to that development and whatnot. I think there's a really cool opportunity here with Lord of the Rings to kind of show the rise of Rivendell and how he kind of took it over and use this time to kind of make peace, given all the war that is happening, especially with the Witch King and Sauron and whatnot.
Time. Okay. We are going to start with Brooklyn on this one. Brooklyn, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
You cannot make a proper Aragorn movie without Elrond. This entire arc that Jack is trying to pitch you on is built off of the relationship that he has with Elrond. It would fit as like a perfect like second act, even like the end of the movie, where it's like it's like, all right, passing off the torch and go on. And that moment needs so much setup because you need to know the ideology and the mythology that Elrond has, especially given everything that he's known through his long immortal life and all of the decisions that anybody in his family had to have made. I'm just gonna end it there.
Okay. Ending about 20 seconds early. We're gonna bring in Jack. Jack, you doing good internet wise? Okay. We're going to get you your 1 minute closing when you start talking.
To say that you can't do an Aragorn story without Elrond, sure. You can have him at the beginning when Aragorn first finds out who he is and the whole lead up to that. And then he leaves Rivendell and then he's not present until the end. Like the Elrond, yes, he's very essential to the early part of Aragorn's story, but then he's a total backseat presence for the rest of it. You could do a lot with his story, with Aragorn specifically. Elrond, he's there at the beginning and then he disappears for the rest. Like I guess I'm just failing to grasp what Brooklyn wants, because the only thing that Elrond did that was worth anything was fight in the Battle of the Last Alliance to destroy the ring, and then the rest of his story is just non-existent. If you want a good Lord of the Rings story, go with Aragorn.
All right. Bring in the judges.
Was my internet rough there for a little bit?
So the moment that you like didn't say anything and then just went, okay, you were frozen. So for a second, I thought you were gone. Then all of a sudden you just went, okay. And then in the background, it was great. Okay. Kirk and Mark, are you ready?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, look at Nikki.
Oh, Nikki.
Okay, I'm all set.
Okay. Mark, you're kicking this one off.
Okay. Yeah, one of these ideas I think is pretty interesting. I think there's stuff to do there. And then another one of these ideas, I'm kind of surprised they haven't done it already. Like, it feels like a slam dunk idea. And that one was Jack. Yeah, I would watch an Aragorn spinoff tomorrow, and honestly, I think Jack this time did a pretty good job of expounding upon exactly what you could do with Aragorn and how there's I think a lot in his story that we really haven't explored and that would be interesting to watch.
They haven't done it yet because they respect material. Let's go to
Do
Kirk.
I'm not saying I don't. I'm saying Amazon doesn't.
Oh, well, that's fair.
This was tough, not necessarily in a good way, because I felt like there's a lot of spinning wheels, and I feel like I wasn't getting a lot of what either show would be or why it would be, or what movie would be or why it would be a good movie. And there's a lot of repetition. Ultimately, I did go with Jack. And again, Brooklyn, I'm sorry, honestly, it's nothing personal. It was very close. But the reason I went with Jack is because towards the end, when, Brooklyn threw out the thing about Aragorn being very stoic, and Jack said, well, you can see when he's younger and you can see when he's different. You can see him change. And that gave me something to cling on to. And like, okay, there's a start for the show, for the movie. That's something the movie can be about. And that did. And then the closings, I think both closings were a little rough because Jack got hung up on Elrond, but Brooklyn lost me towards the end of his, where he was saying, oh, he can come in the third act and he can do this. And I wasn't sure exactly who he was talking about. So I was completely lost on that one. So again, it was close, but just a few things gave slated to Jack.
Okay. My vote doesn't count. I would have also gone with Jack Attack. I thought it wasn't close. Personally, I think that Brooklyn even realized it when he ended 20 seconds early. He was like, fuck it. I don't know. I thought Jack did a great job in the one point of, and maybe it's my, like Lord of the Rings bias coming in, but maybe, but Jack's one point of being like, you saw the most exciting thing that Elrond has ever done. We've seen it already. So anything surrounding it just doesn't hold a candle, whereas there's a ton of exciting stuff on either side of where we see Aragorn in the trilogy. I thought that worked really well. And also I said to Maggie behind when I was backstage that we kept referring to the Lord of the Rings trilogy as the original trilogy, and it kind of hurt my soul a little bit. Put some respect on those films. Anyway, so Jack stays alive. He needs to hit this next one to send it to the speed round. And if Brooklyn hits this one, he wins the game. So the category was drafted by Brooklyn in the category of comedy. The question is, which stoner comedy should be seen by more people? You two. All right. So Brooklyn, you get to kick it off. You have 1 minute when you start talking. You're muted.
There, that's better. Judges, the year is 2012. We have Snoop Dogg and Wiz Khalifa wanting to make a movie, and they are like, let's make a movie about us being in high school called Mac and Devin Go to High School. This is an incredibly underrated movie that needs to be seen by more people because it is at both times it's hilarious, but also educational in the subject matter that it's talking about. It has this really fun style of like 2000s rap sort of sketch things. Like you see why it didn't get a theatrical release, but I think that low budget kind of quality to it just gives it the charm, and the humor lands in this. There's some really really fun moments sprinkled throughout it that kind of give it its little charm and its uniqueness. It's a one of a kind movie that I don't think would even get put out in the theaters, and which in hindsight more people need to see because of that.
Time. Okay. Jack, we're going to move over to you. 1 minute when you start talking.
So the stoner comedy subgenre is really a hit and miss one. You've got, on one hand, some comedy classics like Pineapple Express, The Big Lebowski, and Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. And on the other hand, you have the straight-to-DVD schlock that is Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay, or, Mac and Devin Go to High School. I'm sorry, but if we're talking stoner comedies that were funny, had some really good actors in it, like just all around, like there was some quality shit in there. The Beach Bum was right there. It didn't make its money back at the theater, and that's a real shame because it's genuinely really good. Matthew McConaughey, I don't know if he was aware he was being filmed for a lot of that, but he is a blast in that movie. It's not much in terms of plot or character arcs, but it's just a vibe, and it's a great movie to watch sober or high.
Time. Saw that movie in the theater, and I'm fairly confident my review on Letterboxd is not sure McConaughey knew he was being filmed.
I may have quoted you.
Fair, good. Okay, so I'm not crazy. I'm like I feel like I wrote that. Okay, 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Oh, this is gonna be great. All right, so first thing, number one, your character is a bad carbon copy of William H. Macy in a TV show called Shameless. Now, I know TV doesn't matter for this. I'm going to give a movie equivalent. Oh yeah, he plays the guy in Dazed and Confused, another stoner comedy about nothing, and it's a better performance of that. Mac and Devin to Go to High School has these really cool moments, like the introductory scene of the joint character that kind of serves as a narrator. He's like go get high before this and whatnot, and tells you about the different strains of cannabis that you consume and the different effects that it has. So it is educational in that point.
First of all, if we're calling Dazed and Confused a better movie, I don't know what we're doing. I'm just not big on that one. That's just me. But regardless, Mac and Devin Going to High School opens with a sentient joint called Slow Burn, which is a more egregious abomination before God than Oscar from Shark Tale, if we're being honest. Talking directly to the audience, telling them, if you're not smoking pot while watching this movie, it's not going to work for you. That's not a good thing. Like the Beach Bum, it works if you're smoking and watching it, or if you're sober and watching it. I was sober watching that movie, and I was having a blast. Matthew McConaughey is so charming and charismatic in that movie. Yes, he's playing a horrible, horrible person, but the movie is just an absolute vibe. There is some great comedy in that. It boggles my mind that you would take the straight to DVD schlock that is Mac and Devin Go to High School.
Yes, because it has charm and fun, and has some fun moments to it. You were talking about this is a great time when you were sober. Were you having a great time whenever Matthew McConaughey sexually assaults his son-in-law the literal second that they get married, and they don't even like move the camera up to kind of hide it, like goes in and grabs it. Like that's just not okay. And then the question of which stoner comedy should be seen by more people, that takes into consideration on top of the cocaine usage that he does at the beginning of the movie, which is I don't know if anybody's worked in the hospitality industry, but never mix those two drugs, so that like you're essentially encouraging that. And the second thing, Martin Lawrence gives coke to a fucking parrot, so there's animal cruelty in this movie. Your movie is basically hyped around the cast that it tries to bring in, and even then it's like Martin Lawrence isn't funny. It's lazy script writing because of all the crazy things that he tries to do. One of the best scenes in Mac and Devin Go to High School is actually at the beginning, whenever they bring out the big doobie, and it's over the PA system, and it's basically right out of a Three's Company episode where there's all these like kind of like innuendos, but it's literally just them smoking a joint. Another cool thing about the movie as well is like in the middle of it, they have all these different pipes, and like as a stoner, you want to see all these different kind of vessels because that's kind of like a collection piece. Sorry.
Look, I'm so glad you brought up everything that you just said, because the first like big joke in Mac and Devin Go to High School is Snoop Dogg, who is 41 in real life at the time that the movie came out, and an underage girl in the high school that he's still going to 15 years after starting there, breaking into an office to find a massive joint, but they accidentally turn on the intercom, and it sounds like that Snoop Dogg, this 40-year-old man, is having sex with this woman, and I didn't find that funny at all. I found that uncomfortable. Are you saying that Martin Lawrence isn't funny in that movie? I'm sorry, but I laughed my ass off at the line where he goes, "Now I got to feed my coke addicted parrot." Like there is some like it's shocking and maybe not great, but it's not like you're watching this movie for life lessons. You're watching it to have fun and listen to the jokes and laugh at this movie. It's a funny movie. Whereas I cannot say the same about Mac and Devin Go to High School. I was miserable watching that movie.
Giving coke to a parrot is not funny. I want to go back to a point where you're talking about the beginning, like the CGI joint or whatever. The demographic that is going to watch this movie does not give two flying fucks, because the second that you're baked watching this, you're like, oh, cool, it's a talking joint. Like the quality doesn't matter, because the substance that it's encouraging you to kind of take as you follow along with this just heightens everything there. So they are able to kind of use that. Also, the sporadic instances of music in this, I think, really help. Like, it just kind of fits the ADHD elements of cannabis, where it's just like you want to hit all these different moments. Yours is just it's rough.
Time. All right, that was wild. We're gonna go to Jack. Jack, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
If you're gonna sit there and say the demographic, the target audience for this movie doesn't give a flying fuck about the inappropriate and bad shit in my movie, it doesn't give a flying fuck about the inappropriate and bad shit in your movie either. You've got actors showing up for like a brief cameo. Zac Efron shows up for like 5 minutes and kills it. Martin Lawrence, he shows up and he gets his foot eaten by a shark a few minutes later. There's some really fun moments in this movie, especially towards the end with Matthew McConaughey on the boat that gets blown up with the cat and him just floating around afterwards. You get the really honestly impactful scene of Isla Fisher's death intercut with their final night together on their daughter's wedding night. It's got things that work. And if a sentient joint is telling you at the very beginning of your movie, be high or this movie's not going to work for you, that's not good.
All right. We're going to move over to Brooklyn. Brooklyn, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
It's a stoner comedy. People are gonna get high. If you go into a stoner comedy movie sober, I think that's even a bigger problem within itself. But again, the question is, which stoner comedy should be seen by more people? And I'm going to pick the movie that solely relies on cannabis, whether it's the variant vessels that can be used in it, the ways you can consume it, whether it's edibles or it's like, hey, if you're going to, here are the different options that you have. Whereas with your movie says, hey, mix yours with Coke, an upper, which it does horrible things to you, as well as it's just like, hey, sexually assault somebody. Not even that, sexually assault somebody that is going to be in your family as it's happening. Matthew McConaughey does a better performance of this kind of character in Dazed and Confused. It's a rehash of that. Whereas my movie tackles the humor style that our demographic is really kind of love in this 2000s kind of rap sketch. And I think it's time. A grand old time.
Grand old time. Strike it from the record. God damn it. All right. Maggie had thoughts about that one, boys.
I hope that question was fun.
Let me tell you, she's just sitting here talking about law, and you boys are talking about illegal business.
It's legal in Canada.
That's you both. That's fair. You both enjoy your weed. Okay,
will do.
Will do. Okay. You guys ready, Kirk and Mark?
Yeah.
This sucks. Okay. Brooklyn's movie sounds like shit, but I voted for Brooklyn. I've seen The Beach Bum. I saw it in the theater. Couldn't tell you anything about it, but once Jack started talking about it, I was remembering scenes from it. And the scenes he was talking about made me laugh, but Brooklyn being like, so sexual assault, and Jack had nothing to combat that. Jack had nothing other than me to like, yeah, the parrot having Coke is funny. Like, Meg, love this. So I don't know. Like, Brooklyn's movie sounds fucking terrible. And if I'm looking at should be seen by more people, I picked the beach bum, but Brooklyn's argument made me pick his. Snoop Dogg's in both films, I guess. Great. Mark, what's going on here, man? Are we going to Kirk? Are we done? What's going on?
Very envious of you, Kirk. I went with Jack. I think Jack did a very smart thing of outlining scenes from, was it Mike and Devin go to high school? And
Mike,
yeah, no, like there's just talking about movies, scene, like, come on, what are we doing here? Yeah, so yeah, like it was an easy go for me with Jack. There we go. Kirk, what do you got?
Okay, this was tough because I've seen one of these movies, and it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But the description of the other movie sounds like it might be the new worst movie I've ever seen. So that's kind of a wash. During the fight, at the beginning of the fight, I wrote real big on the bottom of my board, needs to be seen, because that's what I don't want to hear. What was the better movie? I don't want to hear what was funnier. I want to hear what needs to be seen. And it was close. I think they both made a lot of good points as to why, but I did ultimately go with Jack. And wow. I do think that because, and again, Brooklyn, I'm sorry, I know it's 4-0, nothing personal, but I feel that Jack's argument that you could watch this high or sober, and Brooklyn saying very, plant his flag, no, you can only watch my movie high, opens Jack's movie up to a bigger audience. I think that's what it came down to for me. And more people are going to see it, whether they're going to be educated on how to do the drugs correctly or not. I'm not in control of that, but more people are going to appreciate Jack's movie in different states, whatever state they choose to watch it in. And I also disagree. I think that Jack did come back with the Snoop Dogg statutory rape comment in as opposed to Brooklyn's sexual assault. So I think that balanced out as well. Just so I don't get canceled, I had a reason for that.
All right, so we're going to move on to the bonus question. Here's how this is going to work, because we're all tied up 2-2. Brooklyn hit the first two. Jack hit the second two. We're tied up. This was going to happen. I randomized the wheel to decide if we were going to melee or fandom. I then randomized the remaining categories that weren't drafted in the main round to find out what the category would be. I'm going to say the question, and then I'm going to repeat the question. Once I've said the question for the second time, the players will be able to answer the question. Whoever says their answer first will be going first. Each player will get 45 seconds, and then each player will get 30 seconds. Then we will vote, and we will have a winner. Do the players understand how this is going to work?
Yeah.
All right. So the side of Fanlay that was spun was fandom. And the category was Marvel/MCU. And the question is, Nick Twohig is going to be having his ear to the ground. The question is, what is the worst MCU movie? So again, what is the worst MCU movie?
Fuck it. I'll go with Eternals.
Okay.
Thor: Love and Thunder.
Okay. So Thor: Love and Thunder versus Eternals. I'm going to take Mark and Kirk out. I'm going to stay on screen for this one to give you guys your countdowns. All right. So, Jack, you spoke first. So you're going first. You have 45 seconds to start your argument when you start talking.
What made the MCU work for such a long time was it took its time to introduce us to these characters. We got an Iron Man, a Hulk, a Thor, and a Captain America movie, and another Iron Man movie before we ever got the Avengers. And we had the characters show up in each other's movies, and that we got no build up at all for Eternals, and we're expected to be invested in these 10 plus brand new characters in 2 hours. And they fail miserably. The story is not good. They waste Bill Skarsgård, Angelina Jolie, and so many other talented actors in this film. And the effects, while they're impressive, are not enough to hold up this Marvel movie. It's truly bad.
Time. Okay, Brooklyn.
You had a great natural progression of Thor 1, Thor: The Dark World, and then Thor Ragnarok, and Thor Ragnarok in particular being taken on by Taika Waititi. And there's this hype coming around for Thor: Love and Thunder. You're getting to see these new characters, and it just falls flat. Gore the God Butcher, it gets severely underused. He's supposed to be this like top level villain that's able to kill like a plethora of villains, and they just have him kill like 2 people maybe, and then kind of talk mean to some kids. And then the ending of the movie is probably one of the worst ones ever, where it's like, oh, hey, I'm going to give you guys the power of Thor, which I just found out for this movie.
Time. Okay, Jack, 30 seconds.
Are you really going to pretend that Thor: The Dark World is not the worst Thor movie? That movie is an absolute snooze fest. At least there's some life in Thor: Love and Thunder. Christian Bale, yeah, he's underused, but when he's on screen, he's cooking. And honestly, is a way better villain than Malekith or Laufey from the first one. With Eternals, the villain, I guess Sprite maybe, or Bill Skarsgård's Deviant. There's nothing.
All right, Brooklyn, 30 seconds.
Thor: The Dark World does a good job of setting up the Reality Stone, as well as the relationship that Thor and Loki has with their mother, in particular their death scene that would carry on in later media. Eternals does a really good job of the storytelling and how it kind of goes back and forth in time and whatnot. It wasn't marketed as like the next like Iron Man or whatever. It was fleshing out more details of Celestials and whatnot. And it's a movie that takes multiple watches. Thor: Love and Thunder is a waste.
Waste. Strike it from the record. Holy shit. Okay. This sucks. Okay.
I'm going first, right?
That is correct.
All right.
Okay, I'm ready. How about you guys?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, Kirk, whenever you're ready, kick it off.
I would have loved to have seen them fight this as a full round match.
Yeah.
Because I think they planted some good seeds. The thing is, they both picked bad movies, but they didn't even touch the worst parts about either of them, which made it really difficult. They just got locked into certain things. I feel like we got into, Love and Thunder versus Dark World, which was even part of it. But I do feel that, again, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Brooklyn, I had to go with Jack. I feel, I don't know. I feel, like I said, Brooklyn spent all his time, his opening on Gore and brought up Dark World, which let Jack talk about it and compare the two. And then, he brought it back in his fight. He left time on the table. There was just too many, I think, missed opportunities for Brooklyn. I think Brooklyn probably had the right choice, but I just don't think he gave me enough either way to win me over. Like I said, if this had been a 5-minute fight, I think we would got a lot more out of it. But as it was, I had to go with what we had.
Okay. We're going to Mark. I went Brooklyn. And in the words of Kirk, sorry, Jack, because I voted for Brooklyn a lot tonight. Just like Kirk has voted for Jack a lot. But I thought this was really close. This was really good. And I think that what kind of won me over was, yes, we got into the weeds with like Gore, but even then, Thor: The Dark World and everything. But I thought that Brooklyn's like pro of Dark World of saying like get into the Loki, the Reality Stone, like all that stuff. Big props, and that was a big point in Jack's 30-second rebuttal of like Thor: The Dark World being the worst one. I thought that was like a big win for Brooklyn. And I also thought, while I do believe that Eternals is actually a very good movie, and Thor: The Dark World is not a very good movie, or Thor: Love and Thunder rather is not a very good movie. I did think that Brooklyn squeaked this one out, but this was fucking close. I agree with Kirk. I wish I might reuse this question. Who says I can't? I'm gonna fucking do it. But that was, all right. Why am I taking away? It was nasty. Mark, you're deciding.
Yeah, no, this one's pretty close. Interesting choices. Think though, I did go with Jack on this one.
Wow.
I think at the end of the day, I was sold slightly more with Jack's pick, and at least about the minuses he brought with Eternals, and like I don't know, like just I think just kind of the weirdness we got kind of in the weeds of it, kind of at least in the Thor franchise, I think is what it was. It was enough to at least sway me to Jack.
Okay, well, that means your winner is Jack Pinchuk. We are going to go into quick post-match interviews. Brooklyn, I think this was your best debate that you've had in Fanzone so far. Like you alluded to earlier, your first match that you played, you came out swinging, arguably against someone not very good, got the KO, totally crushed, then struggled in your next couple matches. Jack took you to the test here, thought it was great, thought you played much better than you have in your previous efforts, and this was fantastic. I know you must be disappointed, but your thoughts going out of it.
Disappointed a little bit, but I agree with you, and I was much happier in my performance. I was glad that I was able to get the Park Chan-wook question. I basically took round 3 off for like Middle Earth. Like I'm not going to try and out nerd Jack in Middle Earth. So I was like, I'm just going to try to listen to what he says and spin off of that. I think I just got to take a little more consideration next time into who my judges are. Especially given the stoner comedy question, and just kind of like what their selling points are, because I thought I did really good in that last question. But yeah, otherwise it's like it's a really good time, a lot better than I thought it was going to be, and I'd happily be back. You're muted.
I'm muted. I said that you did great. Who do you want to play next time is what I was saying.
I don't know. I'm not in the community as much. Just throw me somebody. I don't know. I'll be the gatekeeper for the 1-0s or the 0-1s. I don't know.
Okay, sounds good, Brooklyn. Great job tonight. We'll see you next time as we bring in Jack. Jack, you said that your first match really lowered your confidence. Last year, you went on, I wouldn't say a huge tear, but you won a couple matches. You got to a contender match, and now you just beat Brooklyn, who, as Kirk alluded to, and I said earlier, is one of the all-times as far as other leagues go. He's been around the debate leagues forever, and you beat him. Your thoughts?
I'm spent. Like I said, going up, like I said in the pre-match interviews, going up against Brooklyn was very nerve-wracking for me, and being down 2-0, I thought I was going to get KO'd again, but that wasn't the case. Thankfully, I was able to take it to the speed round, and when in doubt, go with my gut. My gut was saying Eternals. I was between that and Dark World, but went with Eternals, and it paid off for me. So I'm just glad about that.
Jack, you're going up against you're going up against someone who's playing next week.
Okay.
You're going up against either Richard Schwartz or Joe Farrelly. Who do you want in the next match?
That's a good question. Richard would be interesting, but I would love to debate against Joe. I feel like that would be a lot of fun. Come on, give me some James Bond to debate, I guess. Let's do this.
Awesome. All right, Jack, I look forward to seeing it. We'll see you in a few weeks when we find out who won that next match. We're going to get quick final thoughts from Kirk.
It sucks. I hate when I vote for somebody so one-sided and they win. Usually what happens, they lose, and it's the best of both worlds, because then the person I voted for can't be mad because I voted for him. The person who won can't be mad because they won. But this sucks, this situation. And I would honestly feel better if, like, Brooklyn would have just sucked and, like, completely screwed the pooch. I voted against because of that. But every one was close. And out of respect, I have to take each point as its own thing, regardless of the score. And, Brooklyn said he thought he did good in the Stoner comedy, and he did. I think they both brought up some good points. I think Jack just gave me a little bit more to cling to, and that was the case in all four of those of the main rounds. So, I think it could have gone either way. I think they both did a great job. Much respect for Jack coming back. I know that's tough when you're down 2-0 and come back and win those 3 points in a row is one of the hardest things to do. So, I mean, that's another feather in his cap moving forward. But yeah, I think this was a really good match.
Mark, thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, this was exciting. I think I don't believe we had a single clean sweep in this match. There was one. Okay, one clean sweep. Okay, but only one. That usually doesn't happen. It's honestly usually get at least a couple. And then Jack coming back and being down 0-2, pretty impressive. And it was fun to be here.
Yeah, guys, this was great. Thank you to Kirk. Thank you to Mark for judging. Thank you to Brooklyn and Jack for playing. We'll see you guys next week with Richard versus Joe. Until then, I've been Tim. We'll see you next time. Bye.
There we go. Thank you very much. Please come again. We have a lot more groceries.